Good evening. We'll call the meeting back to order. If I may, do you want roll call? I'll ask you all to please stand for the flag salute. Mr. Oden, if you'd lead us, sir, in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Right hand over your heart, ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'll turn to our city attorney for a report on matters discussed in closed session. Mr. Alshire.
Yes, council met in closed session. The items listed for the redevelopment agency, the first three real property items were not discussed. That's the Spa Casino, Sunrise Village Mobile Home Park, and the Palm Canyon project. The Sky Point Drive Carver Company's project, we gave a status report, no action was taken. For the city, real property negotiations, we discussed status of real property negotiations on the tennis center, no action was taken. We also gave a status report on real property negotiations for the visitor center, no action was taken. We gave a status report on real property negotiations for acquisition of a trail easement with John Westman, no action was taken. And we gave a status report on real property negotiations concerning the convention center, no action was taken on that. Concerning negotiations with Unified School District and Desert Healthcare, that matter was not discussed. The Fashion Plaza with John Westman, that was not discussed. Litigation matters, we have a status report on the Desert Water Agency matter and also the El Dorado matters, no action was taken. And decision to whether to initiate litigation concerning Bighorn sheep critical habitat, we gave a status report, no action was taken. The exposure litigation was not discussed.
Thank you, Mr. Alshire. Now we'll turn to public comments on matters within the jurisdiction. Anyone here wishing to address the council, please come forward. There's a microphone next to Troy, and welcome. And we'll offer you, sir, 3 minutes. There's a timer above me. It'll give you an indication. It'll count down. If you give your name to the city clerk, we'd appreciate it, sir. I believe you pushed the button, sir.
Oh, is that how you do that? Yeah.
Thank you.
Rob Parkins. I'm a citizen, taxpayer, and property owner in the city of Palm Springs.
Is that all, sir? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm watching the clock, sir. Thank you very much. Mayor, council members, Mr. Manager, friends, I wish I could say I'm happy to be here, but I've kind of enjoyed the fact that on Wednesday evenings, I'm a 4 o'clock up guy. I got to get up at 4 o'clock. So by Wednesday evenings, somewhere around this time, I've got about an hour left, Mayor, and then I'm gone. And that's about the time that your 5 constitutionally mandated public speakers are getting into full flower. And so I've not been able to follow you as well as I should. But I'm actually here because I'm concerned enough about what is currently on the ballot and what I see as a serious threat to the future of our city. And I'm referring to the 4 initiatives that I have dubbed as being authored by the evil empire. 3 of those are designed to destroy the quality of life we have worked so hard over the last 10 years to achieve. And one of the initiatives, in my opinion, is just silly. The 3 that I think are designed to destroy the quality of life is the first is the utility tax that we've worked so hard over how many times? 3 elections? About $5.8 million of funds that would have to be sought from some other source, but it's unnamed as to where. I mean, it's a palliative. It's a comment or a claim without a plan. Item V is restating or changing the TOT, in essence, to favor what we call the boutique hotels in a way, but also removing $5 million from the general fund of the city and further creating havoc from the standpoint of public safety. And term limits, in my opinion, are the silly one. You got term limits every 4 years. Parking has an incredible and significant impact on economic development, and it is clouded to make it appear as if it would be in the benefit of the citizens, and it is not. You would no longer be able to collect in lieu parking fees. There's some question that will be discussed later, I think, on whether or not you could even have no parking for things like the Festival of Lights Parade. I'm not going to speculate on the motives of the group that's behind this effort. Others will do it. But they have placed those of us opposed to their efforts having to ask our voters to vote in the negative. And as you all know, you only get about 8,000 voters, so you got to convince 5,000 of them that they need to vote in the negative, which is harder than an affirmative campaign. As a consequence, I'm going to ask you if it's possible for the city as quickly as they can to produce an educational piece that demonstrates the consequences not the gloom and doom that they would characterize this as, but actual facts of what will happen if these 4 measures proposed by the evil empire actually pass. Now, we went through this exercise once before, and we were very careful to make certain that the measures that we would have to take would be actually those that would be imposed. And I'm asking you to please do the same thing. It would help those of us that are trying to work to defeat these measures to accomplish that task. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome aboard. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff, my name is Rick Service. I operate Las Casuelas Terraza in downtown Palm Springs. I'm here to talk about a subject that I don't know very much about, is parking. And I just wanted to, in contrast to Mr. Parkins's comments, I just wanted to come here and praise the foresight and the great motives that have produced this ballot initiative for parking in Palm Springs, being free and unrestricted, as we all want to be in America. And I think it's a crime, really, that the city ordinances and the CC&Rs in our community don't let us park all of our RVs and our boats on our streets. And I think we ought to be able to do that and just line them all up on our residential streets. And I think it's going to be a great boom to tourism that we'll be able to declare our downtown to be a motorhome haven where people can come and they can camp in their motorhomes and they can cook and they can use our downtown as a motorhome parking lot. And I think that's terrific, and without any fear whatsoever that they're ever going to be towed or that they're ever going to have any retribution for doing that. And I just think that if you really believe in the great American way, that you should endorse this idea. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address the council? Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. I didn't know that Rick was a stand-up comic. My name is Grace Jablow, and I'm a longtime resident of Palm Springs. I chose to live in Palm Springs because I enjoy the quality of life that Palm Springs affords me. That quality of life is being threatened, and that is what brings me here to speak to you. In November, Palm Springs residents will be asked to vote on 4 measures, Measure U, V, W, and X, which qualified for the ballot by the DeVille Group. Who is the DeVille Group? They are the nameless and faceless proponents of these measures. Why are they hiding? Why all the secrecy? They are like a stealth bomber, hiding their identity. If they feel their cause is so just, why not just stand up and be counted? The 4 measures on the ballot are Measure U, repeal the city's 5% utility tax. Measure V, reallocate transient occupancy tax funds. Measure W, impose term limits for mayoral and council positions, board and commission appointments. Measure X, eliminate public parking fees and end taxes on monthly parking spaces. Ask yourself why you live in Palm Springs. The quality of life, the many wonderful amenities, our outstanding police and fire departments, the beautiful parks, ball fields, library, and much more. Also ask yourself why this group is out to destroy Palm Springs as we know it. What is their true agenda, and who is behind this scurrilous action? Tomorrow, the Desert Sun is featuring a story about these measures. I urge all residents to familiarize themselves with the issues and, as informed voters, vote no on the first 4 measures, U, V, W, and X. Preserve our quality of life and turn back these shadowy usurpers. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the council, please come forward. She knows.
Good evening, members of the council. I'm David Justin Lynch of 1111 East Tockwitz in Palm Springs, and I also speak in opposition to all 4 of the ballot measures, and I'm hoping that the City Council will put out some material to inform the voters about the consequences of these measures. In particular, the utility tax. It is quite noteworthy that the persons who are advocating the abolition of the utility tax have not put forward any alternative as to either how the expenditures of the city could be cut or what the alternative sources of revenue are. It's very essential that that be pointed out. Second, as to the transit occupancy tax, there was recently a ballot initiative, I believe within the last 12 months, which dealt not only with increasing the transit occupancy tax, but also with the connection between the transit occupancy tax and the funding of the convention center. It is absolutely essential that the convention center be expanded to accommodate the larger conventions to increase the sales tax revenue and other positive economic effects on the city of Palm Springs. I believe that if this measure passes, that will become impossible. That's a very important effect of the measure that needs to be pointed out to the citizens. And finally, the parking situation. The City Council has labored long and hard to try and address the parking situation in downtown Palm Springs with the new parking structure, where I'm told we'll have a Thanksgiving dinner on the roof of the parking structure, assuming that the contractor performs in an appropriate fashion and gets it done in a hurry. But it's important to remember how that parking structure was funded with the in-lieu fees and the various trade-offs made by the landowners and merchants. That mode of financing would become impossible if the parking measure passes. The parking measure, I realize, has a superficial appeal to most citizens, free parking anywhere as long as you want it. But it's more complicated than that, and it's unfortunately that the proponents of that measure have not dealt with the after effects of that measure to any extent, as they have not with any of the others. And I think it's very important for the City Council in the ballot arguments to be very factual and point out the likely consequences of passing these measures. It shouldn't be a far-fetched argument, but a reasoned, cogent argument, straight, right to the point, no nonsense, explaining to the people how their quality of life will be negatively affected if these measures pass. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else wishing to address the council? Please come forward. Give your name to the city clerk and welcome.
This is Wesley Ross. Good evening, council members and mayor. My name is Wesley Ross. I reside at 2682 Anza Trail. I have been a resident of Palm Springs about 33 years. I'm here this evening because I am puzzled over the function and policy of the Palm Springs Police Department. On July 18th, 2002, I reported a bicycle stolen from my residence. The bicycle tracks and very distinct shoe prints lead to a duplex behind my residence. The reporting officer noted and pictured said shoe prints. On August 26, 2002, shoe prints, identical shoe prints leading directly into a specific duplex unit behind my residence. I called the number of the reporting officer. He did not respond. I then went to the Palm Springs police station. Now, what's important is these are in sand, so they degrade rapidly. After waiting over an hour, an officer finally interviewed me and in so many words explained there was nothing they can do and they are not interested. In the last month, there have been a rash of intrusions and thefts on private property in my neighborhood. My neighbor, his neighbor, and the neighbor across the street have all had items taken or burglarized. I had been under the impression that one of the functions of the police department is to protect private property and investigate theft. However, I am now coming to believe they only create an illusion of protection. Please note that I am not criticizing the officers involved. They were very professional and polite. I believe they are only doing their job as dictated by those who manage public policy. Let's hope the Palm Springs Police Department is not like the Border Patrol, which stops traffic on major freeways to create the illusion of protecting our borders. Anyone who believes they do protect the borders need only to get on Interstate 10, drive due west 110 miles about, Exit where the signs indicate downtown Los Angeles. Then walk around downtown, and they will realize the fraud perpetrated on the American public. The fraud is not created by the Border Patrol officers, but by policy from above. Let's hope the Palm Springs Police Department is not in the same protection illusion business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else wishing to address the council? Seeing no one, we'll close public comments, and we'll turn to council comments, questions, or reports. Council? Council questions, comments, reports? Should we wait? Oh, dear. I'd just like to announce to the community that we have discussed the intent of having an event held on September 11th, the evening thereof. There is an observance, a memorial to that tragic occurrence in our history. It will be held in the Palm Springs Stadium, formerly known as the Angel Stadium, directly across from the public library. Gates will open at 5:30. The pre-event concert should begin at 6:30, and the event will last from 7 till 8. We have been very successful thus far in securing sponsorships, including the American Red Cross. The City of Desert Hot Springs pledged $15,000 to the event. Desert Sun is on board with a number of advertising opportunities for ads and informing the community across the valley. Kraft Nabisco has donated commemorative lapel pins, estimated value in excess of $10,000 in pins. U.S. Filter is donating water. SCE has made cash contributions, and the Riverside County Credit Union has made contributions. The Agua Calientes, the Cabazon Band of Kuya Indians, and so on and so forth. There are a number of citizens that have come forth in their intent to support this event. If your calendar allows you, please try to clear it and join us in a solemn remembrance of those fallen Americans and others that were lost tragically a year ago. We have extended invitations and received acknowledgments from a number of consul general offices out of Los Angeles, so we'll have some international participation at the event. So if you can come, please join us. Okay, that's my report for now. Additionally, it should be noted that although the City of Palm Springs has a number of employees, we deal with the tragedies of simple day-to-day life experiences. And August 28th, which would be today, we lost one of our employees. Richard Sir was a member of the city's team since 1987 and had been a custodian at the airport since 1992. And he died shortly after being diagnosed with cancer. And we lost him this day. And he is survived by his wife and 2 daughters and 1 son. So just silence, if you would, to remember one of our fallen friends. Thank you. Our condolences to the family, of course. Any additional council comments, questions, or reports at this time? Otherwise, we'll turn to our city manager for his reports. Mr. Reddy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Just one item I would like to note to you. This past week, myself and Assistant City Manager Troy Butzloff, Lou Husfeld, Director of Public Information, and Dirk Voss, Head of Code and those kind of inspections from the Department of Building, and we attended the tennis club neighborhood meeting. It was very productive. We had discussions ranging from obviously from noise to traffic calming and things of that nature. But what I indicated to them and what I'd like to let you know is that we committed to one of that member of that team will be attending every meeting that the tennis club has. We're also extending that offer to every neighborhood group so that each of their meetings, one of this member of this staff at this level is there, just kind of listen, understand what their issues are, and to be able to provide some support and follow-up. So I wanted to let that you know, and I'll be making that invitation to all the neighborhood organizations that meet on whatever regular basis. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, sir. We'll now turn to our study session agendas. There are 2 scheduled for tonight's agenda. The first is the Palm Springs International Airport Explosive Detection Implementation Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd ask Al Smoot, Assistant City Manager and Director of the airport, to come forward. He's going to give us a brief presentation that has to do with beginning the first of the year, when it is going to be required that we have the device that checks luggage. And that's going to obviously create different kinds of issues for us at the airport and how we service our customers. And with that, I would like Mr. Smoot to explain to you the details. With that, I would turn to Al. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reddy. Mr. Mayor, members of council, I want to pass around a little handout to you, and then I'll talk about the plans. Before you get intrigued by the maze, let me give you a little history behind the maze. With the adoption of the Aviation Transportation Security Act almost a year ago, Congress put in place a series of deadlines. Many of those deadlines have passed and been met. The next major deadline that is approaching is November 19th, at which time the federal government will have fully federalized the checkpoint at the airport and have federal employees in place. And they actually started the interviews this last Tuesday, and we'll be interviewing several hundred people next Tuesday. And we hope that within 4 weeks we will actually be totally federalized. All of the equipment will be replaced over there in the next 3 weeks. That's the checkpoint. Now, what we're here to talk about tonight is the bigger deadline, which is the December 31st deadline, on which every airport in the country, all 429 of them, must begin 100% check of all luggage that is checked into the cargo hold of an aircraft for explosives. We have been working diligently to try to figure out how to do this. There is 2 pieces of technology that are out there which we're allowed to utilize. One is called ETD, which is explosive trace detection equipment. That is basically a piece of equipment that allows you to use a small swab to put over the outside of the bag or the inside of the bag, and then they stick that in a device and it reads whether or not there are traces of explosives, and it checks for about 23 different types of explosives. Pretty good piece of equipment. We've been using them at our checkpoint. There is an explosive trace detection piece of equipment there that's used randomly now. It's been there for 4 years. It works pretty good. The other piece of equipment is called a CTX equipment, which is basically a scanning device that is similar to some of the scans that they do medically. And it is a very big piece of equipment, about the size of the table here, the center part of the table that we're setting at. It costs $1 million and weighs a ton, quite literally a ton. It's very sophisticated and does not work. Has about a 35% failure ratio and can create major problems if you've got a lot of people to put through a system. And it is big. We have been working with Boeing and DMJM, who are the consultants to TSA, to figure out what we're going to do to meet this at our airport. They came to us a few weeks ago after having met with us for about 10 minutes and walked in with a set of plans and said, "This is the plan. You got 15 minutes to review it. Give us your comments. It's going in tonight." Our comment was, it's garbage and it will kill us at this airport. Luckily, it did not go in that night, and we've had several meetings since then, and we now are getting closer. What we have been able to convince them is that we do not want CTX equipment. The failure rate on that will cause passengers to back up out the door. What we want is the ETD equipment, and at this point the plan is for 100% ETD equipment. The current plan is for 27 ETD machines, which would give us 54 working tables or working stations to be utilized during the peak period of time. There's an attachment in there that's also on the wall, and I'd like to walk you through a couple of things there. If I can get this to work, it worked.
The easier one. Is it work? Is it okay?
No, it doesn't work. Now it doesn't work at all. Hello?
Works good now. Okay. This is the southerly end of the terminal building, the new portion of the building where Continental has it, and it's at a bigger scale, so it's easier to read than this. And currently there is a stanchion set up in there that people can go in, they stand in line to get to the ticket counter. And if you look at this drawing, the blue dots would be as you might go in today with your bag, wander through, wait in line, and get to your ticket counter, and you check in, they put a bag tag on your bag, and off your bag would go. Under the new program, it won't stop there. They will tag your bag, and at that point, you and your bag have to follow the orange line and end up to where you will be, your baggage will be checked at one of these ETD desks. The current protocol says that 40% of the bags will be checked on the outside with just a simple swab. 40% of the bags will be checked on the outside and a simple swab on the inside, and 20% of the bags will be opened up and checked pretty thoroughly. That's the existing protocol. The outside swab takes less than 40 seconds per bag. The inside out takes about 1.5 minutes. The thorough takes 2.5, supposedly. The average person at Palm Springs carries 3.5 bags, so it could take some time. That's one of the reasons for all the stations. You'll also be able to check your luggage at the counter or at the curb as you do now. Again, you would come up, go to the sky caps, they would tag your bag, you'd go to a line, stand in line, and you'd end up going to one of these stations. This end works pretty easy. If you go over to the other end, it gets a little more crowded. Nothing nearly like what the first plan was. Again, we end up with ETD equipment south of American. There's actually going to be one right in this location between United and American. 3 or 4 stations in an area where there's a vacant ticket counter area now. There's no airline in there. And a total of 5 stations by Alaska and America West. There'll also be a couple across the way in some alcoves that we're creating, and several out on the curb. If all of these are manned, it takes 54 people to man them. So 54 people per shift, if you the whole thing. And there will be some days during the busiest time of the year we will have to do that. Or they will have to do that. It's not our people. At this point, this particular plan with a few modifications is on its way to Washington, D.C. For them to review. And with any kind of luck, if we want to call it luck, we will have an approval in about 2 weeks. And then we have been told that the equipment will be on a truck by the last week in October, and we have to do our preparation of the building between now and then. So we have a whole bunch of work to do. And I want to go back and talk to you more about that, but if you have any questions about this at this point, while I'm up here, I'll be happy to try to point.
Just in understanding the sequence, you go through as you do now, through a queue, through a line.
Correct.
To check in. You now traditionally get your boarding pass and you give that ticket agent your luggage and you walk to your gate and then you go through metal detectors to get to that gate.
Correct.
So in this scenario, you go through the queue, you get your boarding pass, you keep your luggage, then you go through another evaluation and inspection of your luggage based on the 3 possible scenarios, including your carry-on, right?
No, your carry-on is not evaluated.
Not evaluated. So you leave your luggage and then you take your carry-on and again go through the next level of security check,
At
which
the
is
check-
the X-ray and otherwise.
Correct.
Okay.
Even though that looks pretty scary and a lot of lines, until they perfect the protocols of other types of systems, I mean, I'll tell you this is a temporary fix.
Yeah.
This is probably 1.5 years, and after 1.5 years, the technology will be much more sophisticated. We'll be able to do what they do in Europe currently, which will be development of an inline system to where you'll come to the counter, check your bag, and your bag will disappear, and they will check it behind the ticket counters with automation. We're not there yet. There's no equipment approved in the United States for that. Even though Congress is talking about an extension of the time for December 31st, we cannot count on that, and if it does happen, it will probably only happen for the hugest airports. We will be expected to meet the deadline because, quite frankly, they're getting ready to load the truck with the equipment right now. One of the things that we have to do is we have to make some changes to the building. The first one is there's an old dress shop that used to be right across from Alaska Airlines. There's a glass that sticks out in the lobby area there. We're in the process right now of demolishing the inside of that, and we will have to take the glass off so that we can open that space up and make it available for some of these ETD pieces of equipment to go in. So our staff is working right now. Matter of fact, there's probably some people over there as we speak tearing it apart, getting ready for that. The second piece is on attachment 2 here, an area right across from where United is. We want to push out the glass storefront and create another alcove there so that there's room for additional ETDs. This will be a project that we have to put together in 3 weeks and get accomplished in order to make this happen. And we are working busily trying to get a design put together right now, and so that we can continue to make the front of the building look almost exactly like it does now, because it's all glass storefront there. We're just going to push it out 12 feet or 10 feet. The third piece is we have to have room for the ETDs down by American Airlines. The only place to put them is on top of one of the staircases that is currently south of American Airlines. And so what we're proposing to do on attachment 3, that area there, is to develop a platform over the top of the stairs. It, again, will be temporary, that will be put in place so that we can have ETD equipment on there to service American Airlines. Again, we've got about 3.5 weeks to get this completed.
Just open this.
And these will be temporary. Like I say, we will immediately begin planning for the long term once we get past these deadlines and get this implemented. Just to let you know, one of the things we're going to have to do in order to make this happen is we're going to have to use a new section in the procurement ordinance, which actually was one that we thought about and said, you know, someday we're probably going to get told we have an unrealistic deadline to meet a federal mandate, and there are emergency provisions in there, and our intention is to use those and probably hire 2 or 3 separate contractors to come in and get this temporary work done for us so that we can meet the deadlines. And then after that, we will hope that the federal government meets their deadlines and gets everything here in time. It will be complicated. Our hope is that it will be completed at least 2 weeks early, and we want to spend a lot of time with the press and to make sure the public understands how the systems will work so that they will work a lot smoother, hopefully. Questions?
Very good. Council, questions? You speak of it being an 18-month solution. We've got proposals for street realignments and straightening out the road in front of the building. Will that additional space between the new curb line and the current building line be utilized potentially for expansion of the facility in that direction? Do you see that happening?
It could possibly, but more than likely the technology that's going to come in will allow us to do this post check-in, which means you will walk up to the counter, check in your baggage, and it'll disappear.
Just go away.
And otherwise, there are a couple of airports right now that are actually looking at a pre-check-in arrangement if they had a lot of space in the front of their lobby like we don't.
Yeah.
If that area was available today, we could put a tent out there and put equipment in there. But the problem with the pre-check-in or the pre-checking for explosives before you check in is once those bags are checked for explosives, you as a passenger cannot touch the bag again. And so there's got to be 10 million porters carrying bags back and forth. And the good thing is That means they have to carry it with you. You have to go stand in line, and they stand with you until you get to the front of the line to check in your bag. They can't leave your bag without you. So we looked at that, and it's an impossible proposition. So more than likely, we're talking about the area out behind our current building, behind where the airline ticket counters are, is popping that building out, running bag belts to a centralized point, and having sophisticated equipment back there that will check the luggage automatically. The big difference is in the United States, we have this thing called our rights, and there's major concern about opening bags without the customer present. In Europe, there's not that concern. They've gotten over that. If they have a piece of luggage that has to be opened, it gets ripped open, and it gets taped back together, and it's part of traveling. Probably within 2 years, we will see the same thing. Either that, or you've got to find a way to grab the passenger and take them to the bag. So we're going to have a lot of fun with this, I'm sure.
Alan, in my recent travels on vacation, while in New York, United Airlines JFK, so it's a big boy. We got standard check-in, got your security check. Luggage was not through this kind of detail at that time. But we got upstairs, and when we got to the gate, TSA had tables, temporary folding tables with bollards in the same sort of queuing arrangement you had, and then randomly would select someone and bring them and open up their carry-on. And in some cases, just want to go through it. In other cases, empty your pockets, the whole metal detector. In one scenario, we watched a gate go through this. People got loaded in the airplane, and then they declared a mechanical, I assume a mechanical problem, but they just called it a mechanical. They then unloaded all the passengers, made them wait again, and then again checked on a random. I mean, you talk about checking bags in 30 seconds, 60 seconds, or 2.5. They took one guy, it must have been 5 minutes. They ran the wand by him and ran through it. This is before you get through security. Once through security, is that same sort of scenario I described in New York, waiting for our passengers at our terminal now or in the future?
It is now. We don't know that it will be in the future. One of the things that's being looked at in Washington right now is once the checkpoints get upgraded with the new equipment
Right.
and the federal workers, their hope is that things will be thorough enough at that point that they will not have to do the random search at the gates. Right now, the law requires the random search at the gates, and we're doing it.
What's the theory behind the random search? You've gone through the metal detector and the inspections. Supposedly you've been cleared. Why then, while at the gate, assuming that everyone on this side of the detectors is cleared, the second?
The theory is the potential that an airport worker who has other access ways to get to the terminal building could carry a weapon in and give it to a passenger.
Okay.
It's a terrible theory, but it's a fact of life.
Mr. Mayor.
Mrs. Hodges.
I'm glad to see this is only temporary because I was watching an article, I believe it was on CNN, a TV show in reference to security, and I believe it was a German company who had this extremely sophisticated machine. I mean, it would just pop the items through, but it wasn't available yet. It wasn't available in production to allow you to, bring it over here. So hopefully in the next year and a half or two, we'll have the ability to make it run much smoother than it does right now.
There are currently 3 or 4 pieces of equipment that are in testing right now by the FAA or TSA now for certification. Once those become available, people will begin moving to it. The problem is the deadline doesn't allow that to happen at this point.
When should we and the traveling public expect these changes to occur at this facility?
Well, you should expect to start seeing some construction in the next 3 weeks. Equipment will start being in place the latter part of October, and training in November and December. So you're going to start seeing it. You won't actually officially feel it until sometime in mid-December probably. And then you'll be feeling it everywhere you travel.
Yeah.
With the exception of maybe some of the very large airports.
Okay. Council, any other questions on this issue? Comments or other? Mr. Smoot, anything else?
That's it.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Reddy.
Thank you.
Our second issue and the final one for the evening is the voter information campaign and ballot initiatives. And I'll turn to Mr. Reddy for his introduction of this issue.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. At council's request, we have on the agenda this evening a discussion of the ballots, and if in fact there is in the debate information that the council requires of staff, or what, if any, direction you want to give to us. I would just like to make a brief caveat, somewhat of opinion before we get into this issue. As city manager, I have an obligation, I certainly believe, to be absolutely non-political and certainly not have much of an opinion on these issues. And certainly I do not. Quite frankly, it doesn't matter to me. I can run a government on 100 million, 50 million, 10 million. I can run a government on any amount of money. It's just the question of what level of service citizens will come to expect. So with that in mind, myself and staff have been looking to put together the raw data, figures, numbers, and with that in mind, you can direct us to proceed however you want us to continue to put the numbers together for your debate as we move through this process. As you know, the issues UVW pertain particularly to the dollars or the parking issues, which is also dollars. Tom Kennard, the finance director, can speak to issue U and V, the utility tax, and of course the TOT. Jerry Ogburn is here to speak and address the issues of parking, and also the city attorney probably needs to weigh in. He has a memo and some thoughts he needs to convey to you regarding what the city's ability to do vis-a-vis information gathering and dissemination. So with that, I would await the council's direction on which, if any, of these issues you want to address first.
I might suggest we get legal's review of the ability to do this and within what boundaries and guidelines, and then shape our debate after we have some sort of framework that allows us to legally discuss this. Is that appropriate in the eyes of the council? Mr. Alshire?
Thank you. We did a brief memo to give you some of the background on this issue. The leading case on the question of advocacy and what money the city can spend is the Stanson versus Mott case, which is a 1976 case. For quite a while, this has been an extremely sensitive issue. Obviously, when city employees are working on city time, when they're using materials in City Hall, they're using the copying machines, the telephone, etc., there is public expense that goes into that activity. And the question has been, what is appropriate public expense and what is not appropriate public expense? Even as the Mott case stated, again, almost 30 years, well, more than 30 years ago, there's no hard and fast rule, and the issue of propriety, what's proper, what's not proper, is a question of degree. Fortunately, there's been a recent case on this issue which I think helps a little bit clarify that propriety issue. And that is the case involving the city of Irvine, the El Toro battle over whether to establish an airport in Orange County and the El Toro Marine Base has been a hard-fought battle in Orange County. And over that period of time, public agencies have spent money on both sides of the issue. The city of Irvine launched a voter registration drive prior to a countywide ballot measure on whether people were for or against the airport. The city of Irvine put together a voter registration drive and prepared extensive materials concerning the measure. And there was a lawsuit filed over this saying that the city of Irvine was engaged in advocacy. And the argument in the opinion was that the city council members had expressed over a long period of time a position in opposition. The city was spending great sums of money to hire consultants and investigate, etc., and that it was very clear what the city's position was, and that when the city put together materials in this voter registration drive, it was very clear what the city's purpose was in getting out the vote And so it was sort of a guilt by association. The city was very careful in the materials that were put out not to explicitly say you should be in favor of or against this measure. It gave material on what the effect of the airport would be, the number, how the runways were going to be oriented, what the flight paths were going to be, what the environmental study said the decibels were going to be, the number of trips that might be generated. It was factual information. At the end of all of that information about the airport and what would be going on, the city did not say, as a result of all this, you should be against the airport. It said, as a result of the foregoing, this is a very important issue which will have many impacts in the community, and you are urged to come out and vote. The court, in looking at these materials and looking at the argument against this being a proper use of taxpayer money, said that, well, sure, the city has taken positions, and it's very well known the city is against this, and it's spent a lot of money, but the materials that we're litigating here, when you read them, they are informative. And there's nothing wrong with a city trying to educate the public prior to a ballot measure. There's nothing wrong with the city conducting a voter registration effort and trying to get out the vote. Where the city crosses the line, when you provide all this information and then say you should take this position or that position, you're then advocating. And it's not a proper use of public monies to advocate. It is proper to educate. We have city staff over the last couple months have gotten some materials from some other cities that have been involved in educational programs. They have done things such as have a factual summary of what the impacts of the measure would be, and then to take from the voter information pamphlet an argument in favor and an argument against, so that the two arguments are balanced. It's therefore an educational piece. Now again, those arguments still appear in the voter pamphlets, so the voters will get those materials. But you can see that there has been a careful effort to, again, provide facts, but the city itself not engaging in an argument on one side or the other. The city, if you're going to provide arguments, you provide the arguments on both sides. And it is fairly straightforward to take things that are going to be in the voter pamphlet anyway, because that's already gone through the process. If you would not want to write an argument where one argument looks like really a good argument and is 6 paragraphs long, and the other argument on the other side is 1 sentence, period, that would not appear to be balanced. So it's a question of judgment. There still remains, as in the Mott case in 1976, no hard and fast rule, but significant sums have been spent in educational campaigns. We have examples of such educational campaigns, and we have the materials from the city of Irvine to as a guide as to what kind of educational campaigns have been successful. We also in this package, by the way, gave you a copy of, there's an effort right now to separate the San Fernando Valley from the city of LA, a succession campaign, and there's quite a bit of stuff going on right now in terms of what are appropriate expenditures for those areas to be spending on that ballot effort. So that's the general standard, and as we go forward, as we prepare specific materials, we will just need to look at them carefully on a case-by-case basis. And I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay. Comments or questions on legal? All right. So the intent here is to discuss the relevancy of informing the voters on the issues before them in this November election. Do you want to run through this TOT issue here that the city finance director has prepared?
Do you
How
have
do you want
an
to move
extra
forward?
set of those?
Yes, we do. Mr. Kennard, could you please come forward? Thank you.
You all have TOT? Mr. Oden? You have yours fax? Dana? You're okay. All right. Good evening, Mr. Kanar.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you have in front of you some information on the transient occupancy tax. I think we can skip over fairly quickly unless you have any questions on the rate history and collection history. Currently, or in the current year's budget, we are estimating $13.4 million from the transient occupancy tax. And page 3 and 4 shows you what we have been using the transient occupancy tax over the last few years. Excuse me. Primarily for the convention center, between the subsidy for the operations and the debt service is just over $5 million, and we've set aside $1.7 million towards the convention center expansion. Other significant areas are the Convention Visitors Authority, $1,125,000, and our tourism division is $1,728,000.
Mr. Kanar, if I may.
Yes.
On that, the convention center expansion where you've got the 1.7, that was what the voters approved last November, the differential between what they were paying and what they are paying now.
That's correct. The $1.7 million is generated by the increase in the TOT rates that were approved last year. It wasn't framed as a specific dedication of that money, but the understanding was that it would be used for those purposes.
But we have set it aside.
That is correct. And of the $13.4 million, about $3.3 million is currently retained in the general fund and used for a variety of purposes to fund police, fire, general streets, libraries, all sorts of other things without specifically allocating it to any one particular item. Page 5 on the listing just is a listing of all the group meeting hotels. Currently in Palm Springs we have two rates. It's 12.5% for group meeting hotels and 11.5% for all other hotels. And the measure that qualified for the ballot would create three rates, and it would be based on the number of hotel rooms in each. It would make a 10% rate for hotels up to 50 units, 11.5% between 51 and 124 units, and 12.5% for everything over that. I did an analysis of what the effect of all of that would be on page 6, and you can see the number of permits that are included in each one of those categories that I just described. These include, 1 to 50, include all of the condominium rentals and timeshare rentals. Most of those would fall under that category. It's a little unclear because it talks about hotels whether or not it would include these, but since a lot of these are individual reporting, one unit reporting permits, I presumed that they would be included in there. Hotels and condos and timeshares that fall into that category comprise about 22% of the total transient occupancy tax collections, or of the $13.4 million, about $2.9 million. If that rate is reduced by from 11.5% to the 10%, it would reduce total collections by about $378,000. It was also unclear if exactly how it would affect hotels that are currently paying 12.5% because they're a group meeting hotel. They don't necessarily have to be a certain size number of hotel rooms. And there are some hotels that are paying 11.5% that under the ordinance, or the measure rather on the ballot, would go from 11.5% to 12.5%. So I wasn't precisely clear how that would play out if the measure did pass. So the effect could be a decrease of anywhere from $378,000 to $478,000, possibly offset by an increase in that last category where some hotels were actually paying more, down to about $330,000. So I think it was also mentioned that we currently put $5 million of the transient occupancy tax into the general fund. This measure would specifically dedicate it to a variety of expenditures, some of which we're spending on, we're all currently spending it on, and some which would be new things. So it would, in effect, shift priorities the council has set via the budget process.
Well, it specifically says that it cannot be used for public safety,
That's correct.
which we currently use it for.
It stays in the general fund and helps pay for some of that, yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Ms. Hodges?
Under the scenario of the initiative, the amount of money that we're currently setting aside for the expansion of the convention center essentially goes away. It just gets melted into this.
I think the initiative said that expenditures for the convention center or expansion would be allowable, so that would be again at council's discretion. The total pot of money would go down, somewhere $300,000 or $400,000, but you would still have the option, if you wanted to spend it on an expansion.
Okay. Any additional questions on the TOT collections? Great, let's go to the utility tax then, please. Council okay with that? Yeah?
On the utility tax, again, I follow the same format with a rate history, and just to reiterate, currently the rate is 5%. That was approved via an advisory measure in September of '98 and has been in effect since then. Excuse me, in '98.
This time. That time it was.
99, I'm sorry. It was approved in November of '99. We made it effective in July of 2000. I got it. Anyway, and of that money, again, it was with the understanding of the wishes of the citizens, and where council took it was to dedicate a portion of that utility users tax to park and recreation and library capital improvements, and we've been doing that over the last 3 or 4 years now. City clerk has prepared a chronology of all the various elections that we've had relative to the utility users tax, and it's a couple of pages long now. On page 5, just kind of a point of information. One of the points made in the initiative was that the city's total spending had gone up dramatically. And I just wanted to show you, this is a chart that shows the city's spending from 91-92, fiscal year 91-92, to the present, and plotted against the inflation rate for that same period of time. And basically we're at the same, almost exactly the same level. For many years we had spent under the inflation rate, and the last couple of years, because of some energy price increases and some other fairly hefty increases in health insurance, workers' compensation, and things like that, unfortunately we have got up to about the same place we would have been if the budget had increased merely at the inflation rate. Overall, that whole period of time, which is 11 years, the average annual growth in the city's budget has been a little bit less than 2.2%, if you take it over that full period. Page 4 estimates the utility users tax. We don't have a final accounting of all of the returns for the current fiscal year, but it'll be something close to $5.6 million for the year that just ended, June 30th, and we're estimating $5.8 million for the current fiscal year that we're in now, fiscal 02-03. One of the other items in the information handed out with the initiative was about the growth in total city revenue, and I think it said something like it had gone up 40% over a 4-year period, and I'm not quite sure exactly what numbers they were using. I went back and I looked at our total revenue, or budgeted revenue, for fiscal year 97-98, and our budgeted revenue for fiscal year 02-03. It went from $37.9 million to about $49.9 million. That's an increase over 5 years, not 4 years, over 5 years of about 31%, an average annual increase of 5.65%. If you take out of that $49.9 million, however, the TOT rate increase, the full effect of that occurs this year, monies that we'll be getting from the Transportation Security Administration for police services at the airport, and one-time sale of land, reduces, adjusting for that, reduces the revenue down to about $47.3 million. That makes the average annual, or the total increase over the 5 years about 25%, an average of about 4.5% per year. Not bad, but not quite the 40% that was quoted. And 7 and 8 just give some details to, or background to where that came from. On page 9, I gave some percentages of what effect the utility user tax revenue going away might have. As I said, it's $5.8 million. If you take that as a percentage of the total operating fund revenue, it's about 11.6%. If you take it as a percentage of the total fund appropriations, it's a little over 12%. Since a lot of the stuff in the community promotion fund, for instance, the funding of the CVA and our tourism division, might be counterproductive to cut there, I expressed it as a percentage of the general fund appropriations. Now you're approaching 14%. And since a lot of the general fund appropriations are not something that it'd be easy to cut, for instance, insurance or utilities and things like that, if the cuts are going to come, a majority of them are going to have to come out of personnel. If you express the $5.8 million as a percentage of that, it's just under 19%. So roughly, to solve the problem with personnel cutbacks, it would require either a reduction in pay or a reduction in people of 20%. And if you excluded the police and the fire departments from that calculation, and everybody else would have to go down about 50%. So I just wanted to, I guess, express this as the extent of the problem that we would be facing. Page 10 talked about shows the exemption application that we have. Low-income people, whether or not age is not a factor in this, but a household of 1 or 2 people that makes less than $22,600 can be exempted from the utility users tax, and in fact can also qualify for exemptions from under the CARE programs from Southern California Edison and Southern California Gas and the telephone company for much lower rates than the rest of us pay. This is available out of my office, and the information on the CARE programs are available from Edison and from the gas company. And on the last page, I just put in a number of programs that we've added over the years. It simply hasn't been a growth in salaries or in wages and fringe benefits for city employees. These are a number of things that we've done here. For instance, the downtown experience, the police department and the streets department jointly staff an office down there. They do extra policing, they do extra maintenance of the downtown, but that costs about $830,000 a year. The fire department paramedic program, with the addition of 6 paramedics, or 6 additional firefighters plus 3 more folks who are trained in that, is a cost about $500,000 a year. This is not a all-inclusive list, and we just put this together in the last day or so, but gives you a flavor for the kinds of things that we've added over the years. If there's any questions or I can answer, I'd be happy to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Canara. Council, comments or questions? Well, I think the documents presented tonight make it seemingly obvious that a reduction in revenue that's derived from the UT would be, in a word, devastating. No matter how you shape it, no matter how you define it, it would significantly change the quality of life in the city of Palm Springs, without a doubt. And I think the important matter before the council is how do we take this raw data and translate it into a document that might take on the shape of a information flyer that can be submitted and distributed to the community, as we've seen evidence in the past. And it appears as though the council is willing to at least dialogue, if not to determine that they want to take that tact. And I guess the intent of tonight's discussion is to what degree, how often, how frequently. And then I guess you need a budget allotment discussed as to how much money you are hoping to spend on it, or at least a recommendation back from staff as to how much this will all cost, because there will come some dollars associated with this. And then the last question, I think, before debate is, do you wish to bring in members of the community that are here that have expressed a concern and get their additional input? Do you want to take it from here? How do you want to move?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Oden.
I think that when we consider that initiatives like these will have such a drastic impact upon the community, I think it's important to have community involvement. So whatever groups or persons from the community who might be interested in participating, I think that's a plus. I also think that we should have some recommendations from staff in terms of costs. I think we need some a proposal of different options that we might choose to pursue in order to make this decision. But it's definitely an avenue that I think we need to pursue.
Well, I know that Mr. Parkins has been working on this on a private basis. Do you mind if he comes to the table?
Counsel? Again, the way to shape this discussion is to demonstrate a way in which to get information out that is not biased. We cannot support discussion that would show a one-sidedness. And I turn to the city attorney for concurrence on that caution. This discussion is about how to get information that is general to the community, not to show a support for any one direction.
Mr. Mayor.
Sir.
That's our position.
Uh-huh.
But people from the community can take whatever positions that they choose.
No question of that.
Okay, but we're just talking. Okay.
Right, but the debate tonight before
For
the
us.
council is how do we put together an unbiased, neutral document to be distributed for information to help the voter decide. Not telling them how to decide, but help them to decide.
So
if you can-
the money that you may raise privately would be on a different campaign than what we would do.
The private sector has no obligation to stay
Right.
away from encouraging folks to vote one way or the other. If I may, I think there is no substitute for being able to demonstrate to the oxymoron is always a well-informed, intelligent voter, but it's our job to try to get them there. And there is no substitute for demonstrating to the voter what that actually means. You recall when we went out to some of the homeowners associations, a police officer, firefighter, and we had already determined that we were going to lose X number of positions and what the consequence of that would be. I think that has a far greater appeal than almost anything you can hand them that's in writing. But it has to start first with that written document so that your volunteers and the people that are working on behalf of defeating the evil empire have some factual pieces that they can take with them. And my recommendation, for what it's worth, is that you look at the roughly 19% cut, and Mr. Manager, it's your call on how you want to deal with that, but that's sort of a department head decision. Each department head has to make some tough calls. I'm only recommending that because it's something that has appealed to the voters in the past. They understood it. They could now understand what it meant to have brown grass in a park because this many
Been there.
parks positions were gone. They now understood what it meant not to have a fire station because this many firefighters were gone. They understood now, I think they would understand what it means not to have the paramedics respond, which is a unique service. Grace said something that we tend to take for granted, and I'm not talking about us at this table, but I'm talking about the citizens in this community. The quality of life here is so good, and we just assume it always will be. But you get what you pay for. And we've had to sell that message now, I've been here how long, 11 years? Darn near every year. But we just got to hunker down and do it again. But they need to have it demonstrated to them specifically what it means, in my opinion.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Oden.
I think that's an extremely valid point. And I think if we're going to communicate the facts to the community, I think we also need to explain who we are and what we provide. I think that sometimes people confuse our federal government with local government. And sometimes their frustration with one, they want to somehow take out on the other. So I think if we can somehow, in this educational piece, address to the citizens what they pay for and how and the type of quality of life that they have, then perhaps we can begin to address some of these issues in the long term, that they won't keep coming back. And that people won't be fooled by outside people from the community standing at a grocery store listening to inflammatory statements.
And securing a dollar amount every time someone signs their name to
Right.
a petition they don't fully understand. So I would concur with your thinking, Mr. Oden, regarding educating them beyond the measure before you as to revenues, where they come from. People have said, and I'm sure you've all heard it, I pay property taxes, where's all that money? The reality is, of the property tax collected, every dollar, we get 27 cents? 27.5 cents.
Analysis one time we did was it cost us $300 for every single family residential unit.
It's a cost
It's a
center.
cost center.
Right. So there has to be some education that the assumption is that you're getting money, City Hall, why do you need this? And the reality is the money we're getting, albeit significant, does not carry the full degree of quality of life that we're so accustomed to, as Mr. Parkins indicated.
Well, I think, too, that people need to understand that, we are a full-service city. We have police, we have fire, we have the wastewater treatment. We are different than the other cities in the Coachella Valley.
I have just one last comment, Mr. Mayor, and then I'll drift back into the audience if you would prefer. Work always stretches to fill available time. We're on a very short lead from the standpoint of the group with whom I'm working. If it's possible to formulate something that has the quality that I know you would like in a reasonably short period of time, it would be much appreciated.
What does that mean?
We need to hurry. Absentee ballots aren't that far away.
Let's then talk about schedule. I mean, how many pieces are there? Is it one mailing with all the issues on it? Is it separate mailing, separate issues? Is it a combined? How do you see it? Is it all of it done with two different mailings? Talk about all of it in a mailing, and then again talk about it a second time in another mailing. How do you see it? What's the recommendation? Or do you want to have staff recommend to us an educational campaign with an associated dollar value?
That
Obviously, one
includes-
single mailing. Yes, sir.
That includes our long-term goal of educating our community.
Yes.
And
it-
if they think that can be done in two, they think it needs three separate pieces that connect. Let's hear from them.
And then a certain amount of expanded distribution and personal contact can be affected by this external group that's working on this as well.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I think it should be shorter and sweeter. And I think all of us received our RCTC pullout. And I don't know how many people read it, but I didn't. Okay? Sometimes you can overkill, too. I think simpler is better. And maybe it can be a four-panel fly, with just talking about them, and hit the points. I don't want it to be a scare tactic, because that's always what gets thrown back, they're going to cut the place on fire, But I think it can be shown in some way that by cutting $5.8 million, that's half the police and fire department's budget.
Oh, and they need to.
Or no libraries, or no parks, or no whatever, Some of these departments would probably just be lost under the scenario. So I don't think it needs to be a scare tactic. I don't want it to be that way. But I think that we can do it such as information.
The proponents, in essence, are trying to disarm you all, and us who are citizens that are concerned about this, by saying in each one of their arguments, don't believe the gloom and doom tactics. But if we're dealing with facts, and the facts are transparent and clear, and they come from the department heads through the city administration for your review, I mean, that's exactly what will happen if these funds are lost. Not a doubt. It's not gloom and doom. It's facts.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Oden?
repetition deepens the impression. I'm not saying we need to do a lot of these, but I think we need to keep them simple in terms of the amount of information that we give in each one, but we need to send out more than one flyer or pamphlet to inform the community. So whatever number that they think, I'm willing to accept, but I know we need more than one.
I agree.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, the other thing that is I believe, a significant consideration in it will govern the work that we produce for you. And I would suggest, because we can do one of two things. We can either cut specific programs or departments to make up the deficit, or you can do across the board where everything reduces some, or you may want to hold some services harmless. What I would suggest is that I would like to come back to council with both scenarios, and that way you can, choose depending upon which policy direction you want us to go.
Do we want to set a deadline for when we'd like to have this information so that when we might expect to have the first mail out?
Well, I think the sense of urgency is clearly accepted by this side of the table, as it is by the other. And it may be of benefit to us to get something in a week's time that talks about some kind of a recommendation. Not so much here's the document, here's the data, but here's the plan, here's the cost. Council, do you want us to do it once? Or are we doing it 3 different times? The repetition concept. Then you get 3 times to say the information, as opposed to only want to do it one time. It's only 8.5 by 11. We got a lot of concept. We got to really simmer this thing down to short and sweet, mind you, but you're only going to give one shot, as opposed to 3 or 4 or 2 or 3 or however else you want to instruct. So I would suggest that maybe in a week's time we get scenarios. You can buy so many of these, distributing it so many times at a cost. We suggest they go out on the 15th, the 28th, whatever the chronology is, and then we start embracing that kind of concept. And then with that direction, in a week's time, you then go to bat knowing you got to get it done on one sheet of paper or it's done 3 different ways. And again, I want to continue to emphasize what I want is clear information. And I will go back to what has been stated and what was handed out about 3 weeks ago, a measure that was run through the city of Fontana that indicated in the center of their document what will happen if the measure fails. And they gave basically, here's the plan. Not threats, not doom and gloom, fact. The council by a resolution has stated prior to the election, well in advance, so the voters clearly understood, you lose this money, here's where it's coming from. So don't be guessing or don't be threatened. We've already taken the action. It's done. I mean, it's fait accompli. So when we say it's going to be maybe fire, maybe police have cut a library out, no, the reality is here's where it's coming out. And I don't think anything is free of a cut. That when you make cuts of this depth in so many of these measures, it's felt everywhere. I had suggested to David well in advance of the budget session, months in advance. I said, David, maybe we're not a city that spends this much money. Maybe we only spend this much money. And David's heart almost stopped. So, well, I mean, basically, you cut your budget in half, and that's who we are. And we both agreed that's not who we are. That we don't run, nor present, nor want, if not demand, a city of that level. We demand this kind of a city. And the citizens have demonstrated that repeatedly through continual approval of the utility tax. Every way, shape, and form. Even when we reduced it by council from 5 to 4.5, citizens came forward and said, how about we put a measure out that raises it? And we said, well, go ahead and try it. Go ahead. And they did, and the voters said, yeah, go ahead and charge us more, because why? We want that quality of life in library, in parks and recreation. So I just suggest to you that we take the action to formalize where it's going to hit.
That's a good idea.
It's a real plan. I
Yeah.
mean, so many police, so many library hours, so many closures, whatever it means, it may mean your staff in the short term has to get a pretty quick idea of what the budget looks like without X amount of dollars.
We can have a relatively quick turnaround. The question, though, that's on measures U and V. What about the parking measure? How would you like me to address that, if at all?
I'll give you my input. In order to remain unbiased, then you have to remain unbiased, which means you can't select the ones. It's an information program of the ballot measures before you. And you present information on the ballot measures. The minute you say, I don't want to do that one, I want to do this one, then it's like, well, why did you choose to educate here but not educate there?
Right.
Now you're demonstrating a bias towards one issue.
Uh-huh.
So
Well,
you don't have to take all 6, is how I see it.
Mr. Mayor.
Charles?
And while we're talking about parking, I think that there's no greater issue upon which I think our constituents need to be educated. They need to know why we function the
Yes,
way
sir.
we do in terms of our parking.
Yes, sir.
So I think it's really important to make sure that we cover it.
Yeah, I would not exclude it, I assure you.
And the economic development consequences
Right,
as well. Right.
absolutely.
Mayor, I was if I may, I'm reminded by the chairperson of this group, Grace, who's chairperson of so many things. And if I don't mention this, she'll deal with me. The absentee ballots are available from October 7th to October 29th, so that's a absolute, that's a week after where we ought to be. We need to be in advance of that substantially.
Well, again, in setting up the program, the campaign, the schedule, the numbers of these documents, that's got to be taken into consideration. Anyone, all of which we have, run campaigns based on what the schedule is. And absentee ballot is critical, at least in my estimation, to
You bet.
succeeding in the campaign.
You bet.
You neglect the absentee ballot, you missed out.
Thank
And
you, sir.
I think we can ill afford to miss out. So let's make sure whatever you bring back in 7 days period demonstrates your understanding of the importance of getting out in advance. Is it 3 days in advance? Is it 5 days? How are you going to distribute it? Tells me that answer. Because if it's hand delivered, obviously that's one way. But if it's mailed, is it bulk? Is it how? So those kinds of answers got to be brought forward, and they all have cost associated with them. You do, Madam Clerk?
Actually, I'd like to point out that the city-wide, they'll be starting to receive the sample ballots that have the absentee ballot request on them starting on September 26th. So actually, it's before October when the sample ballots, the ballot information goes out. It's the back of that contains that request.
All the schedules, all the critical dates have to be in this, clearly and comprehensively. And then the question is, do you want to place this information not just in the hands of the voter via mail? Do you want to place this in the hands of the voters on the website? Just put it on the website. Channel 17. Put it everywhere. Okay? You're basically running an information campaign. And the goal is to inform the voters so they can make an intelligent decision. Okay?
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, do you want to hear from Jerry Ogburn on any parking issues at this time?
Well, I think we know what they are. I think we just need to have them in writing so that it can be,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We would
Mr.
cooperate
Council.
any assistance in helping us in a neutral position, mind you. I understand you have your other goals, sir, but
We
while
have
at this table, it's to inform generally, and that
Understood.
represents the clear facts of the matters before the voters.
Understood. We'll save the passion for outside of this room.
Okay, now, parallel courses. When we are running this information campaign, my suggestion is, what else are we doing on the parallel course to do the resolution that states, here's where the cuts will come from? So that we have to start scheduling, from your standpoint, budget reviews and sessions that say, here's where it's coming from, and we can agree that, yes, you can do that, or no, that can't happen. So I don't think it's just figure it out, Mr. Reddy, and bring us some sort of doom and gloom, but give us something that's real, and then we got to accept that. That's going to take a little bit of work on our side.
Mr. Mayor, I was thinking about perhaps having a workshop, scheduling a workshop on this very matter. If it's council's pleasure, actually, I need probably 2 workshops coming up, one on the convention center master plan and the other on this issue that we're dealing with this evening.
I would suggest the idea of another session specifically towards this would be a benefit. And again, in the educational process, I would hope that what we do is check a venue that affords us the ability to televise it, so this discussion is, again, before the citizens.
Yes, the venues would be in this conference room, televised.
Council concur with that? Off calendar, so it wouldn't be a Wednesday night, because we have limited Wednesdays before the election, may in fact require some movement. 13th, you looked at a date at one time?
Thursday, the 13th, was a possible date, and then the following
Yeah.
of September.
The
12th, I'm sorry.
12th.
12th.
Calendar? You do? How about a tentative commitment? Yeah, September 11th, we would have met on a study session. We're going to hold off because we're doing the memorial, so it would be the Thursday after.
And would you like this first workshop, I presume would be for the information campaign or the convention center? Because I'll need two scheduled.
I think it has to be for the information, simply because of time.
Yeah. Okay.
They're both important, but,
Yeah.
you know.
Then if we could follow up the following week then with the workshop on the convention center.
I would think the first priority, and I think Dana hit on it clearly, first priority is.
Are you talking about the
information
third Thursday?
Actually, a Tuesday would be better on that one for
Oh.
the convention center. The following Tuesday,
Yeah,
the
that'd
17th.
be better for me because I have
the
a
city-
commitment on
The city attorney would be able to be present as well.
What time?
Let's go to the 12th first. What's the 12th date on that Thursday? For the workshop?
Afternoon, late afternoon?
Is afternoon okay?
Right, I'm going, yes.
Ron?
4, 5?
I'm supposed to be in Sacramento at a state mining board hearing on the Thursday.
On the 12th?
Yeah, I get to fly up on the 11th.
Well, I would suggest we continue to move forward. Just give us some sort of legal advisor here for the meeting so we stay again. Your goal here, Mr. Alshire, is to keep us right on a neutral course, so we don't show any deviation beyond that. We tend to get sort of fiery at times. I want to make sure that we don't deviate off that neutral and get ourselves in trouble. So Thursday, 5, council? Duration? You want to represent 3 hours? 5 to 8? Okay. This is for the information.
And then on the 17th, Tuesday, for the convention center, master plan. And both would be in this venue in the conference room currently. Thank you.
Right.
Are you having
Okay.
closed sessions before
Okay.
those?
No, just the 5.
Can't come that night.
Just the 5. Tuesday the 17th?
That's a Signal Hill Council meeting night. First and third Tuesday. The 10th, the second Tuesday.
10th I can't do. We've got rehearsals for the 11th for the event. We're going to bring 200 volunteers together, try to figure out how to make that event happen the next day.
Thursday, the 19th would be,
You have problems, Mr. Roden, on Thursday?
okay.
Yes, I have a regular meeting. Yes, I have a regular scheduled meeting on the third Thursday.
We could move these to the first week in October. September.
No, we're talking.
I'm sorry.
No, this is not
I'm
the
sorry, I'm
information
sorry.
campaign.
First
This
week in
is-
September.
This is the discussion.
Right.
It's not the information campaign on this scheduling. This is the convention center. Is that correct?
We could move to the first week in September. Either of these. We could move the information piece up to the 3rd or the 5th, and then have the convention on the 10th or the 12th.
That's all right.
So you want to move the workshop to the what date?
The
Workshop the 5th, 5 to 8 o'clock.
for the informational.
For informational. Okay, and then a week later, have another workshop at 5 to 8, and that's the convention center?
Yeah.
So that's the 12th.
Yep.
Yes, that'll be it.
12th.
I do the 12th.
So
You
the
can or
city to-
No, I'm in Sacramento the 12th.
Okay, but so the Tuesday that week would work better. The 10th.
No, the 10th will not work. I've got rehearsals for the 11th. I can't make the 10th. It's still on. Believe it or not, we still have those rehearsals, yeah.
Is it
So
possible
we're
to do them
going
both same night?
9/5 and 9/12.
Could we do both the same night?
No. I don't, well,
I guess it depends upon how much information there is.
is there a problem with the 12th? You're going to be out of town.
In the 12th, I'm in Sacramento.
We're going to look at our convention center master plan. Is that going to be a legal issue? We'll be here.
Why don't we start at 4, and then we can do it on the 5th?
We can be ready by the 5th.
Can,
Council?
I would rather do them separately. I just think it's a lot of information, and you don't want to feel pressured because we've got to get out an important piece.
All right, so I still show the 5th as the information campaign.
Look, we can have another representative for the 12th from the office if we need legal counsel for that evening.
Yeah.
I'm fine on the 12th.
Me too.
Okay.
Well, I think it's important. I think we need the city attorney at that discussion.
On the convention center?
Yes. What night could you make it that week?
Wednesday night. I can, on that week, I
Yeah.
can make it Tuesday, Wednesday, but not Thursday.
Tuesdays.
I can.
10
you
and
can.
11, no good. So,
Okay.
Friday the 13th.
league dinner in Indian Wells on the 9th.
Well, why don't we go to the 17th then for the, oh, you can't do the 17th.
Right, can't do the 17th. The only days I can't do are the 3rd, the 17th, and the 12th.
If you want to do it in the afternoon of the 10th, there are senior center installations at a luncheon, so it'd follow the luncheon and then come back, and then I've got to leave at 4 for the rehearsals. Takes the afternoon out. Got a problem with that. Yeah.
The commissioner workshop.
You want to keep the job. That's where the job comes in. Otherwise, it's knock at the door. Are you Mr. Roden? Don't answer that door.
We could do it as a study
We
session.
don't have an 11th. That's your problem.
Although, question to Jim Dunn, who's in the audience, if we did the last study session of the month for the convention center, is that problematic for your schedule? '25th.
2-5.
That's not good when she says that it has to be out on the 26th.
No, this is convention center,
I
master
understand,
plan.
but, the master.
Master plan, yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you this. We've exhausted the possibilities. I suggest this get worked out once all of you have your calendars. But we've got the information campaign at least in place. We're going to see something next Wednesday. When is our first?
No, not next Wednesday, the 5th. I have it down, the informational campaign to be on September. My understanding is that you'll have a workshop scheduled for September the 5th. That's a Thursday, to go over the informational campaign, and that will be starting at 5 p.m. here in the large conference room.
Mm-hmm. So there's no expectation to see anything represented on the council meeting on the 4th. It'll all come to the 5th.
And lucky for us, the finance director has taken his annual vacation last week.
I feel lucky. Okay. Anything else? Just got to work out the date on a convention center based on 9 to 5s and conflicts with evenings. Otherwise, we're back on the 5th to discuss this issue. Okay? At this time, anything else, Mr. Reddy?
That is all. Thank you.
All right. Council, anything else? With that, I'd like to adjourn in memory of Richard Sir from the airport, and I wish you all a safe trip home. Thank you all, and good night.